At just 20 years old, a young Macedonian named Alexander dreamed of ruling the world. It was just a dream. It was the start of a fiery journey that would forever change the map of history. In this video, you'll discover the man who challenged kingdoms, toppled empires, and became a living legend. The story of Alexander the Great begins now. Don't look away. Part 1. Who was Alexander? Alexander the Great wasn't born into royalty. His father, King Philip II of Macedon, initially planned to make him a soldier. Yet destiny had grander plans. You see, back then, Macedonia was a small kingdom in northern Greece, but Philip II had big dreams. He wanted to unite all the squabbling Greek city-states under one banner, and he wanted his son Alexander to be the one to carry on his legacy. So King Philip II arranged for his son to be tutored by the famous Greek philosopher Aristotle. For 10 long years, Aristotle taught Alexander everything he knew about philosophy, science, literature, and politics. And when I say everything, I mean everything. This turned out to be an incredibly important event in history, because very few students got the opportunity to learn from such a brilliant mind. And if they did, their education was usually paid for by their parents. But King Philip II didn't care how much it cost. He wanted his son to be the smartest, most cultured leader Greece had ever seen. Not only did Alexander take after his father in looks and athleticism, he also absorbed his strategic thinking and love for his homeland. When he was 13 years old, he rode his horse named Bucephalus for the first time. From that day forward, the two were inseparable. Alexander inherited Bucephalus, a magnificent horse that was considered untamable, from his father. And together they went undefeated in war. Alexander was passionate about horses and warfare, but he was also interested in poetry and music. In fact, he wrote more than 70 poems during his lifetime. There is even a rumor that he composed a poem for his beloved horse Bucephalus after the horse died during the conquest of the Persian Empire. He continued his education by studying war tactics and military strategy under the best generals in Macedonia. As he grew older, it became clear that he was destined for greatness. Before he turned 20, everyone in Macedonia knew that the next king would be Alexander. Part 2. Early rise to power. However, tragedy struck when Alexander was just 13 years old. His father, King Philip II, was assassinated by one of his own bodyguards. Even though he wasn't the rightful heir to the throne, young Alexander's mother, Queen Olympias, managed to convince the royal council that her son should become king instead. This way she could ensure that her bloodline would continue through Alexander. Now, not everyone was happy with this decision, especially the royal family. Antipater, who was married to Philip's widow, didn't want Alexander to become king, because he believed that it was his son, Philip III, who should take the throne instead. However, the Macedonian army was on Alexander's side. They proclaimed him king and declared that he would lead them to victory over the Persians. Now, before taking the throne, Alexander had been trained in secret to prepare him for the moment. It was now his duty to unite Greece, conquer the Persians, and avenge his father's death. However, there was a problem. Macedonia's neighbors weren't happy about Alexander taking the throne, and they had started an uprising. The newly crowned king had to act fast. He raised an army and marched to the rebellious city of Patadia. After a 6-month siege, the city fell. Next, he traveled to the strategically important Chalcis Bay and defeated an invading force from Athens. Then he crushed a revolt in Thebes and made an example of the city by destroying it to the ground. Alexander was just getting warmed up. Part 3. The Great Beginning. Crossing the Hellespont. Soon, the ambitious young king was ready to take his next step. He assembled a massive army that consisted of infantry, cavalry, and war elephants. Together, they crossed the Hellespont, an ancient name for the Dardanelles Strait, and entered into Asia Minor, also known as Anatolia today. In 334 BC, the king of Lydia, one of the regions in Asia Minor, had sent a message to the Persian king asking for help against the Macedonians. However, before any reinforcements could arrive, Alexander's army met the Lydians at the Granicus River. The battle was fierce, but in the end, Alexander's forces won. During the fight, he was wounded in the thigh, but he continued to lead his men until victory. This was Alexander's first major victory, and it set the stage for his future conquests. Part 4. The decisive battle at Issus. News of Alexander's victory at the Battle of the Granicus. River reached the ears of King Darius III of Persia. Darius was worried that if Alexander kept marching south, he might lose control of his entire empire, so he assembled a huge army, which included elite soldiers called immortals, as well as war elephants. With this force, he met Alexander's army at the Battle of Issus, near the city of Antioch in 333 BC, once again. The Macedonian king was outnumbered, but his troops fought bravely and won the day. The outcome of the battle was decisive. Darius III fled the battlefield, leaving behind his wife, mother, children, and other members of his royal family. Alexander displayed magnanimity towards the captured royals, treating them with respect and ensuring their safety. This act of nobility enhanced his reputation as a great leader. Alexander's victories in Asia Minor attracted the attention of the wealthy Phoenician city of Tyre, located on an island off the Mediterranean coast. Alexander wanted to build a road connecting the Egyptian city of Gaza to Sidon, so that he could easily travel between his two territories. But to do that, he needed to get past Tyre. The citizens of Tyre refused to let him pass, unless he first lifted a long-standing ban on trade with the city. When he refused, they closed their gates to him. So Alexander laid a siege on the island for 7 long months. Finally, he managed to breach the city walls and capture Tyre in 332 BC from here. He moved his troops south to the Egyptian border, where he was greeted as a liberator. The people of Egypt saw Alexander as a champion who would free them from Persian rule. He was even crowned pharaoh and given the traditional Egyptian crook and flail, symbols of his new status. After settling matters in Egypt, Alexander decided to venture further into the Middle East. He founded the city of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, which would later become one of the largest and wealthiest cities in the ancient world. Part 5. Coastal Conquest and the Capture of Tyre and Egypt. When news of Alexander's conquest of Tyre reached the ears of King Darius III of Persia, he knew that he had to act quickly to stop the Macedonian advance. Darius assembled a huge army and met Alexander. His forces in a decisive battle near the Persian city of Gaugamela in 331 BC, the battle was long and bloody, but in the end, Alexander's forces emerged victorious. This victory marked the end of the Achaemenid Empire, one of the largest and longest-lasting empires in ancient history. Following his victory at Gaugamela, Alexander continued his campaign eastward, seizing Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the ancient Persian capitals. As he advanced deeper into Persia, he encountered the local rulers and incorporated their territories into his growing empire. Some rulers submitted peacefully, while others resisted, but ultimately, they all became part of Alexander's vast domain. Alexander's journey through Persia was not without its challenges. He faced resistance from local tribes and had to deal with administrative issues as he incorporated new lands into his empire. Despite these obstacles, he pressed on, determined to extend his empire as far as possible. Part 6. The Great Campaign into the Heart of Persia. Alexander's insatiable desire for exploration and conquest led him even further east, beyond the borders of Persia. His troops followed him as he crossed the Hindu Kush Mountains and entered the fertile valley of the Indus River. Here he encountered King Porus, ruler of the local kingdom, who opposed Alexander's advance. Their armies clashed in a brutal battle at the River Bees in 326 BC. Alexander's forces, exhausted from their long journey, faced a strong and determined enemy. Despite the odds, they fought valiantly, showcasing bravery and skill on the battlefield. King Porus, astride his war elephant, Selenos renowned for its size and strength, charged into the thick of the battle, scattering Alexander's ranks. Though injured, the Macedonian king persisted, rallying his troops and turning the tide of the battle in their favor. Eventually, they overwhelmed King Porus, forcing him to flee. When Alexander caught up with him, he found that Porus had fallen victim to a fatal arrow wound. Although he had won the battle, Alexander felt a pang of admiration for his adversary. Recognizing Porus's valor and the resilience of his people, he chose to spare the kingdom and allow its people to remain under their own rule. This decision showcased Alexander's magnanimity and strategic thinking, earning him respect even from those who had opposed him. But despite his many victories, Alexander's relentless drive for conquest took a toll on his troops. After crossing the River Bees, his exhausted and demotivated soldiers refused to march any further. This unexpected turn of events forced Alexander to abandon his campaign in India and retreat westward. Part 7. beyond Persia, into India. As Alexander's weary army retreated westward, they followed the course of the river Bees, tracing their steps through the lands they had recently conquered. Along their journey, they faced minimal resistance, allowing them to recover somewhat and prepare for the long journey back to Babylon. Upon his return to Babylon, Alexander began making preparations for new campaigns. He reorganized his army, appointed loyal generals to key positions, and set about securing his empire. He also took time to enjoy the luxuries of Babylonian life, including wine, women, and the company of his many lovers. While in Babylon, Alexander succumbed to illness and died in 323 BC, at the young age of 32. Various accounts attribute his untimely demise to malaria or typhoid fever, with some even suggesting poisoning. Despite his sudden death, Alexander left behind a legacy that would echo throughout history. His empire, though short-lived, had a profound impact on the ancient world, fostering cultural exchange and spreading Hellenistic influence from Greece to India. After Alexander's death, his vast empire was divided among his generals, a process known as the Wars of the Diadochi, marking the end of the era of the Great Conqueror. Conclusion: Alexander the Great died young, but left behind an eternal legacy that shaped the world forever. In just 10 years, he redrew the map of the ancient world and inspired generations of leaders and conquerors. But what do you think of Alexander? Do you see him as a noble hero who championed freedom and justice, or as a ruthless tyrant who craved power and glory? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.